Good afternoon. As you know that we have already discussed various sociological thinkers like Emile Durkheim and Max Weber, and today we will continue this lecture with the modern thinkers, but we will take example from India with social thought of Babasaheb Ambedkar. And we will continue this lecture with, we have our expert with us, who is a renowned thinker, Professor Vivek Kumar, who teaches sociology in Center for Study of Social System, and he is a full-time writer and scholar as well. So on your behalf, I would like to welcome Professor Vivek Kumar.
Thank you and good afternoon, friends. For 2 days we have been engaged in discussing the sociological thinkers who contributed into the making of subject matter of sociology. They helped to give sociology its status which it enjoys today in the discipline of social science. But today we are taking a little bit a different tour. We are going to discuss social thought of Dr. B.R. Ambedkar, one of the modern thinkers of Indian society, and then we will like to take some elements of Durkheim, some elements of Weber when we discuss Ambedkar, that whether these elements were present or Ambedkar also has some elements of his own which can be categorized as sociologist in his own right. To begin with, let's see, Babasaheb Ambedkar, as you know, was born in India in Mahu on 14th of April 1891, and he lived up till 6th December 1956. So he had a 60 years of life, 65 years of life, in which he basically contributed in different realms. Ambedkar, his whole understanding can be also understood through his movement, and if we see your monitor, we can see that Ambedkar and his movements are basically four in number. The first is the socio-religious reform movement, the political movement, the constitutional measures for the Dalits, that is also a movement, and the fourth is basically religious renouncer or religious movement. Now, it is in this context that we will see how Ambedkar wanted to construct his ideas. First and foremost, let us see the influences of B.R. Ambedkar, influences on B.R. Ambedkar. If we see influence, the first and the foremost influence on Ambedkar comes of Buddha. Buddha is considered to be one of the very few social reformers in India who led a movement against the orthodoxy, against the rigidity of the Indian social order, in which actually there was a lot of conflict. The second influence on Babasaheb Bhimrao Ambedkar, as he was known to his followers in Maharashtra, was of Kabir. And Kabir's his father, Ambedkar's father, was a Kabir Panthi, and therefore Kabir's influence was another influence on Ambedkar, who constituted in building up the social thought of Ambedkar. The third influence, if we see on Ambedkar, is of Jyotirao Phule, who was another social reformer from Maharashtra, who led Satyashodhak movement in Maharashtra and led a very stringent fight against the rigidity of the Maharashtra society. Rest, if you see the word, he was influenced by democracy of USA, and in that he was influenced by certain professors. John Dewey and Seligman were the another influence on Ambedkar, and it is these influences of democracy and most of the thinkers, most of the social reformers, Buddha, Kabir, Jyotirao Phule, Seligman, John Dewey, they were all heart in heart Democrats in their thinking, and that is where I think Ambedkar's thought were more or less shaped by the democracy of the system. Now, if we take that Ambedkar, can he be called a sociologist? This is one of the important questions which people ask. Can he be called as a sociologist? If we take his lives and work, definitely, friends, there are studies, his writings and speeches which have just been published by Maharashtra government, and they number somewhere 20 to 25. I think they will tell you that his work, his analysis of institutions like Varna, Hindu social order, caste, then if you see what he wanted as social just order, his analysis of unique and essential features of history, all will suggest that he was a sociologist in his own right. But Baba Saheb Ambedkar was not only a sociologist. He, by training, was an economist. He only did 6 papers of sociology and 4 papers of anthropology, but he did his major, his MA, his PhD, and of course his DSc was all in economics. Therefore, by training, he was a economist, as Weber, Marx, both were economists, and they were later on incorporated in sociology. So we will have some similarity with Weber, Marx and Ambedkar. We will see in due course of time how Ambedkar tries to analyze Indian society. Then, if you see Ambedkar's analysis as a sociologist, all the sociologists in India, the sociologists like G.S. Gure, M.N. Srinivas, T.K. Uman, Andhra Bethe, all have tried to understand Hindu social order through the textbook and book view of Hindu social order, and this is what is known as caste system of India. So, the origin of caste system in India is basically analyzed. Its origin is from the book view, and the book view is nothing but Vedic religion, and that is Rig Veda. So, we argue that Rig Veda is the basic unit from where caste system emerges, 4 Vedas, and Ambedkar very succinctly, very eloquently in his book Who Were the Shudras tries to analyze Hindu social order. The sociologists also try to argue that the traditional system, the Hindu traditional system, is based on holism. That is, individual is not free agent. Ambedkar analyzes this element in his essay in volume 3 of Writing and Speeches, Unique Features of Hindu Social Order, in which he says that yes, essential features and unique features of Hindu social order, and he says yes, in Hindu social order, individual is not free. Individual is not free because he is part of either Varna, and therefore he is basically a part of a larger whole. Similarly, the sociologists have tried to argue that yes, in Hinduism, the individual is not free. So, one of the analysis is this, that Hindu social order recognizes dependence of individual on the larger whole, whether it is caste, whether it is varna, whether it is village. Now, coming to the second element of his sociology of Ambedkar, Ambedkar tries to analyze caste system in India, and he was trying to argue, taking examples from the field view and book view both, but this article in which he tries to analyze the genesis, mechanism and spread of caste system in India, he wrote this article in 1916, in which he had tried to argue that what is caste system, how it has taken, what is its origin, and how it has spread to all over India. Now, to begin with, he argues that caste system is nothing but juxtaposition or imposition of exogamy over endogamy. He categorically rejects the stalwart anthropologists like Risley. He also rejects many other sociological theories where he was trying to understand that yes, this whole understanding of caste system is erroneous, because some people were trying to give theory. Risley was trying to give theory of caste, origin of caste on the racial basis. There were guilt theory, but Ambedkar was one who said that no, this is not true, that racial theory is not correct theory in India. And he gave example that if racial theory is based on color, then it is very difficult to find out the differences of population on the basis of color, because if you say that Aryans were fair and tall and the Brahmins basically they are akin to Aryans, then it is very difficult to prove that how the untouchables, ex-untouchables of the Punjabi society, Punjabi, they are very tall, they are also very fair. So, that means race cannot be considered as the origin of caste in India. Now, then he also said that people have argued that it is basically occupation, because of occupation there is caste. Ambedkar refuted the argument that no, occupation cannot be the basis of caste, because the occupation which are there in India are present world over. Had occupation been the origin of caste, then these castes would have been there world over. But in the world we do not find caste as such. We find basically these occupations, but we do not find caste system. And it is in this context, friends, that we should understand that Ambedkar's theory of caste was much more profound than the other sociological thinkers in India, those who were doing field work and those who were collecting data. As far as Ambedkar's own theory, he said that look, any society, if you see origin of caste, if you see in origin of caste, then you have to see how the population, 50% of population is male and 50% of population is female, and therefore people have argued that only one chance will be given to male and female to get married. And if somebody loses his chance by any cause, maybe death, maybe birth, something like that, he will not be given a second chance. Now, every person, every group has only 50% of caste. Now, it is in this context that the population of male and female were categorized. But what happened that sometimes, usually some deaths or untoward thing happen and a person loses one person from the male, so he will not get another chance, because if he gets another chance, then he will kill the rights of the other male. So what happened, that one thing could have been that you could have burned that person on the funeral pyre, but because he is a male, he is a asset to the society, he cannot be burned. So he should be given another spouse, but he cannot be given a legible spouse, a grown up woman, but he can be only given a woman who is younger to his age. And that is why Ambedkar argues that this rigidity of marrying people within the group gave birth to caste, and therefore he says that endogamy is the real element of caste in India. Now he also says that because of this, we find that there is child marriage in India, there is satis in India, also there is widowhood. Because if a male dies, if a male is basically loses his wife, then what happened, that he can take another female who is younger to his age. But if suppose a husband of woman's husband dies, then she is not allowed to remarry in the Indian society, and therefore there was rampant widowhood. Now if either she could go and burn herself on the funeral pyre, and that was also considered to be the sati practice and the child marriage. All these three institutions emerged because of endogamy, which is part of caste system. So caste system emerged. The origin of caste system in Indian society, according to Ambedkar, is the endogamous marriage in the group. Now how did it spread? How did it spread to other parts? Ambedkar gives another theory. This theory is considered to be Tarday's principles of imitation. Tarday's principle of imitation, that people try to imitate the lifestyle of the people who are at the highest pedestal in the life from them. So we will always try to look up to the higher status people, and in this way what happened, that the upper strata first closed, and he says that it was the Brahmins who first closed their doors for marrying outside their own group, and in turn the others were lost out. So it is the imitation process through which the caste system is spread throughout the India. Ambedkar did not only talk about genesis, mechanism and elements of the caste, but he also talked about how to annihilate the caste. And it is here a sociological thinker gives his own analysis of the real elements of the caste and then to break them. So 2-3 elements he talks about how to break it. The first element was, of course, that he said that because caste is considered to be divine, and therefore its divinity has to be dismantled and deconstructed. Without dismantling the divinity of caste, if we keep on telling people that caste is made by God and therefore man cannot break it, we cannot do it. We cannot do anything. And therefore, friends, he said that yes, we have to question, and we have to question the caste system in the sense that it has to be annihilated, and it has to be told that it is man-made institution. It is nothing to do with divine or God. It is not made by God. God has made everyone equal. This was first part, that divinity part has to be basically broken down, deconstructed. And how divinity comes to the caste? It is through the sacred texts, the scriptures, because it is said that Vedas are the books from where the origin of caste has taken place. So we have to question that as well. The second element, how to break the caste according to Ambedkar, was you have to go for inter-caste marriages. And he says that the upper strata, the lower strata has to come together, and then only the caste can be broken. If they start marrying with each other, then there will be intermixing of blood, and with the intermixing of blood, you can very well see that how that nobody will be able to hate the offsprings of the intercaste married people, and hence we can bring a society without caste, or a casteless society. The third element was, of course, he was trying to argue that the priesthood has to be questioned, and everybody should be given at least basic minimum qualification to become a priest, and priesthood should be thrown open. So, three elements of Ambedkar to break the caste. So, caste, what is caste, how it has originated, he talks about Varna, he talks about individual, he talks about analysis of caste and annihilation of caste. Now, from here if we go, Ambedkar has also tried to argue about nation. His theory of nation is very important to understand, because it was he who for the first time has argued that India is not a nation, it is nation in the making. And he quotes Ernest Renan for actually talking about, he talked about caste. He talked about he talked about nation, and talking about nation, he said that India is not a nation, and he was echoing the voice of the many Anglo-Indian administrators. He was also sounding like Tagore. Rabindranath Tagore was also of the opinion that India is not a nation, it is nation in the making. But the question can be asked that why India is not a nation? And it is here that Ambedkar very politely replied that how a nation, how people divided in thousands of castes can be called as a nation, because castes are anti-national. They did not allow fraternity to emerge. They did not allow sharing, and therefore we cannot be a nation, we are divided. Now, for this, Ambedkar also argued and said that actually if India is not a nation, then what is a nation? And according to Ambedkar said, quoting Ernest Renan, that nation is a living soul. Nation is an idea, it is a living soul. One thing is basically in the past and another is basically in the present. One is to live together, to share the cultural heritage, and it is just like a man who grows with sharing the cultural heritage, the cultural capital handed over from one generation to another generation. And therefore there is no sharing between Hindus and Muslims, because Muslims talked about their Quran, their Hadith, and actually their own icons. Hindus, on the other hand, talk about Gita, Ramayana, and their own icons. So there is no sharing between Hindu Muslims, and therefore there cannot be a nation. Nation emerges when the two sharing takes place. He also tries to argue that how Indians have subjugated the ex-untouchables, the Dalits of the Indian society. And he says that there is no sharing between the two. They have been relegated to periphery. They have been excluded. They have been denied every right whatsoever, educational, political, economical, religious. Every right have been denied to the Dalits, and that is why India is not a nation. He also argued that women have been subjugated. Women have been excluded from the developmental activities, from the rights people have to be given. Nobody has given them the right to develop, and therefore India as such doesn't qualify to be called as a nation. It is nation in the making. So He argued that how can you make a nation? He said that nation can be made only by the inclusion of the people in the institutions of governance. And he argued that unless and until we include women, scheduled caste, minorities, and the women folk in the national programs, policies, decision making, nation will not emerge. So nation for him was an idea in which we have to include every group in the sense of caste, creed, religion, and of course gender, all have to be included into the making of a nation. But friends, what has happened? Ambedkar has been victim of reductionism. His ideas of individual, his ideas of caste, his ideas of religion, all have not been understood. For example, you take religion. Ambedkar was very much into the favor of religion, and he said that religion not only universalizes values through which people get accepted into the interactional pattern of the society, rather it is also a agency of social control, and therefore it is very, very necessary for the society. So he said that only constitutional means will not help you to develop the nation, but you have to think of nation as a being, an individual who takes away, who takes all along, shared things has to be there. Now, you can build up nation also by forgetfulness. Ambedkar was very categorical that you have to forget many things. If you want to make a nation, then you have to forget many things, and unless and until you forget, you will not be able to live. And he gives example of France. He gives example of the France, that East France and West France, they were perpetually in war. But now, in the contemporary society, nobody can say that actually they were in war, and therefore they are now a nation. Nobody say that there was a division or actually internal differentiation. Similarly, nowadays you can see Germany, how East and West Germany have come together, collided, and they are working together. Now, for establishment of national integrity, and also for the establishment of a social order, a republican democracy in India, Ambedkar has given some principles that to follow. That if you want to keep your democracy alive, then you have to have certain elements to follow. The first and the foremost element Ambedkar discusses was or is self-introspection. He said, and he argued, that it is not for the first time that India became dependent. There were many times, but we have not learned lessons, and if we don't learn lesson now, we have to understand there are Chechens still sitting within, and Chechens can create havoc anytime, so we have to be on guards. The second thing he mentioned was that, look, we have to follow the constitutional means for actually developing the democracy. We should not go to the unconstitutional means of dharna or lockups or sit-ups to break away the constitutional measure, because India is young and we need constitutional mechanism to be established. And therefore he said that bhakti has to be denounced from politics. Bhakti reverence. Bhakti in religion is fine, but bhakti in politics is sure short wisdom for actually for degradation, for subjugation. Third thing, he said that on 26th of January 1950 we are going to enter in a very strange age. In politics we will have egalitarianism, but in social and economic aspects we will have inequality, and therefore we have to bring our political democracy towards social and economic democracy as well. Now, for doing that, we have to understand that we have to break the monopoly of the elites of the society if we want to really bring up the democracy to social and economic level. Friends, he gives example from the French society, from Japanese society, that how in the French society, when there was a revolution, and after revolution, how nobility, clergy and commoners, all three, they sat together, and the nobility, who were the elites of the society, they even clergy, who were the elites of society, they sat together with the commoners, the poor people, and they sat together and evolved a constitution which was much more egalitarian and just. And today, French society is considered to be the most developed democracy of the world. Similarly, he talked about Japanese society, in which he gives example that how elites at times samurai, they came together and they actually gave their rights to Lord, and then Lord actually decided that yes, there has to be egalitarianism. But in Indian society, it has not happened. He said that actually monopolistic tendencies are emerging, and therefore we have to break these monopolistic tendencies on the governance and power, and then only we can bring the democracy in toto. Otherwise, this will be only political democracy. Therefore, friends, we have to understand Baba Saheb Ambedkar's larger contribution to the development of a society in which he tries to analyze economy, he is trying to analyze the polity, he is trying to analyze education system, he is trying to analyze the constitutional mechanism. Now, in constitutional mechanism, if you see what has happened, it is he who piloted, single-handedly, he piloted India's constitution. But even today, his larger contribution to the making of the Indian constitution has not been recognized properly. How much contribution he has made, which will be, it will be very, very easily narrated, because actually the amount of time he gave, the amount of intellectual work he did for the development of Indian constitution is very, very large and vast. That has to be understood if we really want to make any sense that how much contribution he has made. If you take his contribution, friends, the time which he contributed into the making of Indian constitution was 2 years, 11 months and 18 days. That means Ambedkar is what was there in the constitution making for almost 2 years and 11 months and 18 days, somewhere 1098 days or something like this. There were 7,000 and more amendments for the development of the constitution. Ambedkar stood there. Ambedkar stood, read each of the amendments, and then replied them. Out of 7,000, approximately 7,500, 2,300 were incorporated, and then it was passed. So, Ambedkar stood all through these difficult times of error and trial. And it is in this context, friends, we have to see his larger contribution into the making of Indian constitution, which have not been recognized yet, and many of the people do not think that any person alone can contribute this much. Now, having said this, his larger contribution in the realm of individual, Varna, caste, annihilation of caste, nation, religion, and now into the constitution making of Indian society, Ambedkar can definitely be thought of that he was really a thinker. He was thinking into the development of Indian society. He was trying to contribute into the development of society. Now, it is here, friends, Ambedkar's one of the most cherished part is basically Dalit movement. He really worked for the Dalits, who are called as ex-untouchables, and he approached their problem very differently. And therefore, we can divide his movement for the Dalits into the four realms: the social-religious reform movement, the political movement, the constitutional and religious. If we see Ambedkar's socio-religious reform movement. The first socio-religious reform movement, if you see, his movement begins from the Southborough Committee, memorandum to Southborough Committee in 1919. He led another Mahar Satyagraha to take water, 1927. His statement before basically Simon Commission, 1928, founding depressed classes education society, foundation of people's education society, and establishment of Siddharth College of Arts and Sciences. Now, the whole contribution of Ambedkar has to be understood in this larger rubric of his contribution to the development of the Dalit society. Because as you all know, scheduled castes constitute 16% of total population of India, and they were of course then more or less the same numbers. So Ambedkar saw their plight and he started leading a movement, and in this movement he began with socio-religious reform movement, and he argued that Dalits, scheduled caste, should be recognized that they are also human beings of the society. Otherwise, what happened that they were not being even recognized as, that they were human beings. They were having no rights, educational, political, social, living together also they were not there. Now, he therefore asked Southborough Committee members that yes, you have to give them the self-representation. And this self-representation was in politics. Now, in politics, if you see, self-representation is very necessary because Dalits were being represented by the others. Ambedkar denied that no, this is not going to be. We have to give them self-representation. And self-representation is very necessary because this society is not conducive for the representation of the others, as people are guided by their own interest. There is no consciousness of kind. People are guided by their self-interest, and therefore self-representation is very necessary. Ambedkar was also replying to Gopal Krishna Gokhale, who was talking about representation of Indians in the British bureaucracy. By that time, Indian Service Commission 1885 had come, and in that actually people were asking that Indians should be given representation in the British bureaucracy. Ambedkar, Gopal Krishna was talking about that, look, because of lack of representation of Indians in the British bureaucracy, Indians are losing their personality. There is dwarfing and stunting is taking place. A dwarfing and stunting is taking place. The Indians are not able to achieve their total manhood, and therefore they should be given self-representation. Ambedkar very politely again responded that if you are saying that Indians are not being given representation in the British bureaucracy, English has come only for 200 years, and you have denied self-representation to the scheduled caste for thousands and thousands of years, and therefore you can very well understand that how much loss, political, economical, social loss the scheduled caste have suffered. Can't they repeat that they have also not able to achieve their total manhood? They have lost their capacity, and therefore self-representation is very necessary. The another element of self-representation was that, look, that if a good government is there, it is for everyone, but the problem is that self-representation, if it is not there and it is democratic, that means only one group will keep on making laws for the others. The others will not be able to make laws, and therefore those who make laws for the others, they will be rulers. But those who are at the receiving end, they will be ruled, and this will keep on going. This is not a good government. So a good government is a government which is not only represent the aspirations of the people, but it is also that which gives self-representation. And by giving self-representation, friends, you will also say that, yeah, self-representation basically gives people the right to make not only law, but it also make statements in the society that they have also a right. So this was the social movement which Ambedkar wanted to read, and with that actually he gave a memorandum to Southborough Committee. Then he led the first movement of India, which is can be considered as the first human right movement. So Ambedkar was trying to build up his production of knowledge with experiential reality, and this was basically that he went and he launched a movement which is not considered as Mahar Satyagraha, one of the first human right movement for taking water in 1927. Then he tried to launch another movement, that is Kalaram Temple Satyagraha, which wanted Dalits wanted to enter Kalaram Temple, but actually they were denied, and it went for hundreds of years. Ambedkar also launched educational societies to lead the movement. His first education society was Depressed Classes Education Society, 1928, Foundation of People's Education Society, 1945, and then established Siddharth College of Arts and Science. Not only that, friends, he also started number of newspapers. If you see, the 4 newspapers come to our mind. Started fortnightly, Mook Nayak, Hero of the Dumb in Marathi, 1920s. He started fortnightly, Baishkit Bharat, 1927. He starts Marathi fortnightly, Janata, 1930, and starts Prabuddha Bharat, 1956. These were the movements. These were the movements part of his intellectual movement, and through this he was trying to write his people's version, their plight, their agony, their suppression, their oppression, exploitation. Through these, and he was trying to enter in dialogue with. This was part of his social movement. Ambedkar did not only stop himself to social movements. Ambedkar went into political movement itself. Ambedkar, in his political movement, started founding the political parties. Ambedkar made Independent Labour Party, All India Scheduled Caste Federation, 1942, and laid the foundation of Republican Party of India, which was established posthumously after his death in 1957. So friends, he produced knowledge through his intellectual capacity, and after production of his knowledge by reading texts, by making theory, he basically led to social movement, and then he led to political movement. Through politics, he went on to London Round Table Conference in 1930. He also gave representation to Simon Commission. He also was involved with a political conflict with Mahatma Gandhi, and then he also was involved in organizing his people on the separate electorate. Separate electorate gave two votes to the scheduled caste, in which actually scheduled caste were supposed to choose their own representatives. On the other hand, there was another vote where general caste candidate was supposed to be chosen. But what happened that Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi argued that no, this separate electorate is divisive in nature and society will be divided, so we will have joint electorate, and that's what we have today. joint electorates where actually seats are reserved for the scheduled caste, and this emerged under Article 332 of the Indian Constitution. Now, after that, we see that Ambedkar was chosen into the Constituent Assembly, and he became the chief architect of the constitution making, and for which he worked throughout his career. But if you see his fourth movement, which was basically the religious reform movement, as a religious renouncer, the fourth movement, the religious renouncer movement, which was there, that he converted to Buddhism in 1956 before his Mahaparinirvan, as was the Pali term for death. Mahaparinirvan, he basically converted along with his disciple, and he argued that, look, I am choosing this religion because religion, Buddhism, is the most egalitarian religion, and there is no church, there is no priest, and people can definitely talk about. Even Buddha himself argued that yes, Atta Dipo Bhava. And then he wrote a long book, Buddha and his Dhamma, in which he tries to deconstruct the ill saying side by side of the on the side of the Buddhism. There are many misgivings on Buddhism, and here he talks about that how people say that Buddha took refuge, or Buddha left Parivarja, or Buddha took sannyas because he saw an old man, he saw a dead man and a sick man. Ambedkar in his book wrote, no, this is a wrong conception, because Buddha took Parivarja at the age of 29. That means he would not have seen a sick man, an old man, a dead man throughout his 29 years. And Ambedkar then actually quotes from different texts, Buddhist texts, that look how there was a discussion, there was a conflict of water between Sakyas and the other kingdom, and there was a water problem, and because of that actually Buddha thought that how to get a solution of the conflict. He discussed, and his father Suddhodana and mother and wife Yashodhara all were involved in discussion, and these are there in Jataks. And Ambedkar brings in, and he says that, look, we have to see how Buddha's life is presented to us in a correct perspective, so we can learn not the superstitious part of Buddhist life as we have been seeing. We have to, because Buddhism is a very rational religion who talks about Atta Dipo Bhava. That means you have to enlighten yourself, and we are not being guided by others. He never wanted to be a preacher in that sense, and therefore I think Ambedkar's contribution to revival of Buddhism was his last and fourth stage. So Ambedkar clubs a very, very different and versatile personality of social thoughts. Friends, why we are saying his social thought? Because Ambedkar brings in wisdom and knowledge from different streams and disciplines. He brings his knowledge from law, economics, political science. He also brings his knowledge from population studies, from sociology, from Sanskrit, from actually other indigenous texts, Pali, Buddhist texts, all clubbed together, and he creates a new knowledge system, he creates a new wisdom through which we can understand Indian society. And that is why he falls into the category of sociological thinkers, because sociological thinkers give us epistemology for the construction to understand the reality. Buddhism, Durkheim was talking about reality of social fact. Weber was talking about reality through social action, and Ambedkar is talking about social fact or social action through his produced wisdom of understanding of caste, religion and society. In this context, I think we can bring Ambedkar as the modern social thinker from Indian soil. I think if you have some questions, we can take some questions, or can we carry on a little bit ahead? This part, actually we see that Ambedkar was quite close to Durkheim and also to Weber in two terms. Durkheim, he was close when he was talking about that individuals they come together and they form a solidarity, and sharedness is very necessary to form nation. That is where Durkheim also talks about that actually when individuals comes together and there is a give and take, there is a shared relationship, then and then only solidarity can be formed. Ambedkar is also talking about when there is a sharedness, then and then only society can be formed. Rationality is another example where actually Ambedkar is quite close to Weber. Weber is talking about rationality where means and goals have a commensurate relationship. Ambedkar also argues that no religious dogmas have to be clean, and for having a just equality, liberty and fraternity based society can be only had once there is rationality in the society. Now friends, if Ambedkar is giving a democratic social order, he is trying to argue, and he takes from Buddhism as well, where actually fraternity is writ large. Fraternity, Maitri, that's what actually Shil, Karuna and Maitri, that's what Buddha is saying, and Ambedkar takes fraternity from there. Ambedkar also takes individualism from Buddhism, that is Attadibho Bhava. That means he is trying to have a modern social order based on equality, liberty and fraternity and social justice. Means are basically constitutional mechanism. Now the traditional social order, if you see, it is based on hierarchy, it is based on holism, and it is based on otherworldliness. That means rationality was lacking. People were thinking that look, individuals are not equal. But here what Ambedkar is talking about egalitarianism, and that is what he preaches in the preamble of the Indian Constitution, where it says that we will definitely have equality. But friends, this is not only that Ambedkar talked about equality. He talks about equality of opportunity. Article 16(4), equality of opportunity is very necessary, and then he also talks about equality of condition, and this equality of condition is nothing but reservations for the scheduled caste. So how to have a egalitarian society? Ambedkar has talked about inclusion of the people and inclusion of all the sections of society, whether it is male, female, scheduled caste, scheduled tribes, and of course poor people, and this have to be done through the constitutional mechanism. Friends, one thing which is more, that now Ambedkar has been recognized at international level also. We see that his chair has come in Columbia University, his bust has come in Columbia University, his bust has also come in London School of Economics, and now his theory is being interpreted at the international levels as well. Having said this, that in Indian society we have yet to recognize his larger contribution to the individual, to the understanding of man, society, nation, as well as the social movements. We have tried to reduce Ambedkar only as a Dalit leader, which is not justice to his personality and his contribution to the larger understanding of humanity and society. Little bit of thought processes. He can be arranged with, he had verbal duel with Gandhi, he also had verbal duel with Nehru, he also was involved in many discussions. But Ambedkar talks about one very important contribution, that is basically how to judge a great man. This is what he gives, three elements of great men, and he tries to analyze these elements by putting it on a human being. He said that a great man has three qualities. One, he should be having knowledge, but this knowledge cannot alone treat him as a great man. That along with knowledge, he has to have as well as morality. Without morality and without actually knowledge, nobody can be great. But this morality and knowledge cannot alone make him the great person, but this morality and knowledge has to be used when the society is in danger, society is passing through crisis. A great person comes and uses his morality and knowledge. It is in this context people can be said that Ambedkar himself was a great personality and a great thinker, and we can definitely analyze his sociological contribution to the Indian society.
Okay, so Ambedkar has three terms: knowledge, morality, and to use that terms in the society. So thank you, sir. And so Professor Vivek Kumar has given us such a great lecture on social thought of B.R. Ambedkar, and I hope that lecture must be interesting and more informative for you all. So on behalf of Professor Vivek Kumar, I would like to thank all of you for watching this program.